So I like that better. So is this cheating? You be the judge. But basically when people ask me how I get my vocal sounds or my synth sounds or whatever, there's basically two ways to answer. One is that I go into great detail and explain to you technically how I did it. The other is to say, fuck you. You have no right to ask me how I go about getting my sounds. If it sounds good, you don't have to worry how I went about it, okay? And the next question, please. Mark Daniels says, my question is, when you worked on Oceanea, did you start with a melody first, or did you create a concept first and then develop the music around an idea? I think all songwriters get asked this question all the time. What comes first, the lyrics or the music? In my case, there's no set configuration. Sometimes I'm in the shower and I come up with a good song title. Other times I'm fooling around on the piano and I come up with a chord sequence or a particular, rhythmic groove that I like and write a song based around that. Sometimes I've got reams of music before I've got any lyrical ideas at all, or other times I write a poem without really knowing what the music's going to sound like either. In the case of Oceanea, I can tell you very specifically how it started. You may recall on 17 Hills I used a pedal steel guitar. It was the first time I'd used one. And taking samples of it, I just started playing around with it, and this particular chord change I became obsessed with. And I think from there I came up with this line, I made it home to Oceanea. And what this really represented to me was the little village on the East Anglian coast that I live in. To get to it, you go across a little bridge and across these marshes. And every time I turn the corner and go across that little bridge, it's like entering a different ecozone. Because sometimes it's a few degrees warmer or colder, sometimes there's a ground fog hanging on the marshes, sometimes it's incredibly windy and there are whitecaps on the sea. Or, every time, it's like a different world every time I get there, and there's always a huge relief to me, very restorative feeling to get back, especially after I've been in the city, because I find cities quite stressful. So it's really about, a long day of meetings in London, taking the train home and coming back across the marshes to my little village, and that feeling of I made it home to Oceanea. And that's really where it started from, and I sort of filled in the blanks from there onwards. Stemish or Steamish asked the question whether the Morse code at the end of Oceanea is real. Well, Stemish or Steamish? The answer is yes, it is real Morse code. Unlike the fake Morse code at the end of Wind Power, this is actually real. And I dug up an old version of the Pro Tools file so I could show it to you. And the significance of the Morse code is that if you're planning on playing the floating city game, you're going to need it. I won't tell you why yet. I've got a little bit of the game actually up on my laptop here. Looking pretty cool. That's about as much as I'm going to show you. It's going to launch in a few weeks, so make sure you play. Oh, interestingly, the same Pro Tools file that I dug up has an old version of the vocal for the last verse. At one point I was going to actually do it as a duet with Eddie Reader, and I abandoned it in the end because she sounded so lovely just singing it on her own that I just left her to it. But this will be the one and only chance you get to hear the duetted third verse of Oceanea between myself and Eddie Reader. kind of nice, I think. Maybe an alternative remix version at some point in the future. Mark Adams asked what the exotic instrument is on the song Simone, and it's this, the duduk. I went to Los Angeles and I was working in J.J. Abrams' studio, which is called Bad Robot Studios, and was lucky enough to get to work with the world's foremost exponent of the duduk, whose name is Pedro Eustache, and I shot this clip of him performing on Simone. Keep the first one sort of like a fairly straightforward statement, just hey, 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 you know, so just theme and variations.
Very good. Mozart style. The rule of 3. 1, 2, 3. Establish something, repeat it, and then expand on it.
I hate to break it to you, Pedro, it's not sounding a lot like Mozart.
The beauty of music is that the universality of principles goes beyond geographies and chronologies. But that's perfect. What you did is I dig it. Hopefully I'll come up with something like that. I'm good, Charles. Let's try this.
Alright, last couple of questions. Jed Bates asked whether the sound effects on the song To the Lifeboats are natural. Well, the answer is, Jed, yes. I record here on the Nutmeg of Consolation, and there's absolutely no sound isolation whatsoever. So when the wind is blowing, the nutmeg creaks like crazy. I do my vocals right here, and I'm surrounded by old timbers, and anything that creaks makes its way into the vocal track, and that's sort of okay. It's all part of the ambience. And sometimes the seagulls outside on the beach are going crazy, fighting over a fish head or something like that, and I generally leave that in as well. Okay, final question from Christopher Libertino. He says, you often talk about how musicians like Mark Knopfler help to tell the story of a song. Have you ever had a story idea that was too long or complex to fit in the relatively short confines of a pop song lyric? The beauty of a song is that you can tell a story and you don't have to spell it out because people fill in the blanks for themselves. And I think that's what I've done really on the Oceanea EP. I've got 3 very unique stories. Each one is individual and yet somehow they flow together. I'm very happy with how the EP turned out, and I hope those of you that have heard it are looking forward to my album, A Map of the Floating City. That's great. A Map of the Floating City, which is going to be out later in 2011. In the meantime, if you haven't already heard it, please do check out the Oceanea EP, which goes live in exactly 30 minutes. And it's time I was in bed, so thank you all for tuning in, and until next time, be well.